my shoulders. I know my soldiers are following your war. Cause kids still dying in the streets at war. On the block running from the police at war.
Hello and welcome to the Benasha Harrison Show here on Intellectual Radio, where we feed our brain. 708-223-8953 is the number to call. Today's show is brought to you by Up and Going Services, 219-614-2403. Again, 219-614-2403, where Anthony McMath is the owner of Up and Going Cleaning Services. From the Southland area in Chicago to the Northern Indiana area, he's doing great things from banquet materials all the way to your personal pieces. One piece at a time is how he does his business. He's been in business now for a while, doing great things, and I really appreciate the service that I have gotten from Up and Going. So again, 219-614-2403, Up and Going Cleaning Services, Anthony McMath. So thank you for the love and support as always. So before I introduce today's guest, I would like to talk a little bit about what happened on April 1st. That's right. The election has come and it has gone. So Jason House is officially the mayor of Dalton, Illinois. To Jason House and to Kiana Belcher, to Miss Norwood, and to Ed Steve. They are the actual trustees that were on his ticket, the Democratic ticket. So congratulations to all of you for your win concerning the campaign in Dalton. So I'm looking forward to working with whatever leadership's in office. And as I've said before, it's not about the seat, it's about the work. So I'm hoping that they are transparent. I'm hoping that they are open. I'm hoping that they give the people of Dalton what they need when it comes to the answers that we still have questions to. We still have questions about what's going on with things in Dalton concerning the finances, concerning services, things of that nature. So again, to that team, congratulations. I am hoping that the next meeting that comes up will be one that's productive and one that people will be able to get answers for. So I like to say this, and then I'm going to introduce our brother. A lot of people have a lot of questions about the election, about the whole process. I said it before and I'll say it again. I'm glad that I won the opportunity to actually run for the seat. I don't measure success when it comes to winning and losing, concerning a lot of things that are for the people. When you're doing things for the people, and when there's somebody else in the office that actually won because their message got across one way or another for one reason or another, I think it's time for everybody to come together. And if you have things to offer the village, you should do it for the village, for those that are sitting in the seat. I encourage you all to be open to every idea that's going on in the village and not take credit for the things that you are not responsible for bringing to the village, because it's not for you to take the credit. It's for the village to benefit from those opportunities. So I just wanted to share that. We're not going to talk too long about the election. We want everybody to stay positive, and not only in Dalton, but Thornton Township, for those who ran for anything in Thornton Township, for those who are actually the incumbents that won again, or the newcomers to the seats. I encourage you all to do the right things by the people. And I'm going to stay consistent. Now it's time to get to work. As I've said before, the work starts after the process concerning the election. The election process has gone. Now, how are we going to come together? How are we going to put a coalition together? How are we going to talk about Civics 101 and move forward so that the agendas that need to be taken care of are taken care of, not only for the village, but the other villages that are part of the township and beyond. Not only the township, but Chicago, other areas around as well. So with that, I'd like to introduce my guest, Mr. Brandon. Welcome to the show. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you.
All right.
You, brother.
All right. Always a pleasure to see you.
All
So
right.
I'll let Brandon give a little bit of his background, and then we'll jump into some discussion about how we're going to get coalitions together to move agendas forward.
Well,
So,
thank you.
absolutely.
First radio show I've ever done, so I haven't been on anything live. I try not to be out in front of anything. Typically, I'm very reserved, very quiet, kind of keep to myself. So, what I do though is I do history, I do study, and I find legacy, and I find out how that brings in, and informs what we do today, and basically what we had previously and what we need to attain. So there's a lot of missing pieces when it comes to legacy, when it comes to heritage, when it comes to understanding about just the way things work and how things are today, as it relates to whether it's politics, whether it's economy, whether it's business structures, even down to your neighborhood. Being able to have different faces live in your neighborhood. It wasn't always like that, no matter where you are in this country. So I guess I don't necessarily have a vendetta besides finding the truth and putting that truth to action and teaching. So my family is very important to me. The legacy that they left. And not just the ones that I know in recent memory, going back to the 18 or 1600s. I'm talking about even further down through where our ancestors came from. So I'm very, as you can see, I got a lot of African features around that informs what it is that I do on my day to day. So,
So let's expound a little bit on your family,
Okay.
your family legacy.
Yeah.
Tell the people a little bit about that, and if you can also talk about the aftermath of the election and what we discussed about coalitions getting together and moving agendas forward.
Absolutely. So I descend from the Spalding family. The Spalding family was one of the families that helped grow Durham, North Carolina, particularly. Um, we come from the southeast region of North Carolina, which is in I would say Beaufort County, Craven County. Um, can't even think of the rest of them right now. Columbus County. And we left there in the south to go to the more sprawling areas. So let's call it, Reconstruction period, after Civil War, after slavery. You had the Freedmen's Bureau, and you now distributing blacks around the country. Prospects and changes and opportunities that never existed are now there. And so we took the opportunity to uplift ourselves. So a lot of my family, let's call it, let's say Booker T. Washington was a piece. He wasn't in the family, but we worked with him directly. Named by the man of Charles Clinton Spalding, his uncle, Dr. Aaron Moore, their cousin, George Henry White, Congressman, Representative George Henry White, one of actually the last congressman in the South for what I think it was about 60 years or something like that. We had no representation. He was the last one to represent blacks in Congress until Oscar DePriest. So, why that matters is, what I found is we created Black Wall Street. As a matter of fact, it was the first Black Wall Street. You get Tulsa, Oklahoma in 1906, 1907, when I can't think of his name right now. The guy buys the land down in the city and creates hotels, creates an economy, creates his own business structure, and brings other people in. By 1907, we were on our second headquarters. And one of our first businesses was insurance. So North Carolina Mutual was the name of the insurance company. And from North Carolina Mutual, we were able to develop a bank, right? So we're getting all this money into the insurance business, and we're distributing it around as a bank would. And there was a bank that either it was going insolvent or they were just starting it up and they needed better operations. So we put the bank on the first floor. We brought them in, and we brought in nothing but leaders, black leaders, whether you were, barbershop owner, or you could be a brick owner, brick mason. There was a bunch of handyman jobs back then that you would think of now blue collar jobs, but it's still good jobs. But that was the start of something very, very industrious, and we built it for the betterment of the community, and we ran it as if it were a part of, like it was a church almost. You know how that feeling when you go to church and you really connecting with your people, you plugged in, and you feel like you have the support you need. Everybody's hugging you, everybody knows you. Imagine
inclusive.
going all inclusive.
All
Imagine
inclusive.
going to work like that every day, you know? So that's the type of legacy that I know existed and that I want to see brought back, because that was during a time where they didn't have any other opportunities. So they had to get it out of the mud for themselves. And they did that by not just being adventurous for themselves. They did it to say, I flew out to North Carolina to go to a library to get some articles that I knew were locked up, but in some archive somewhere. And I stayed with that place. I mean, it was a genealogy library, I believe. And I just went there looking for a book, and they had the book, but they also brought out extra material. And I realized there was so much information locked away. And one of the articles that I read was Charles Clinton Spalding reading or being questioned about, how did you build this business? How did you build this bank particularly? He said, look across the street. Him and the guy looking outside. That's a white-owned bank. And he went over there and he said, I want to get all your black accounts. Give me all the black people. And the white people were like, fine, you can have them. Won't even fight you. And he said once he got those black accounts, he was tired of seeing everybody take their money, and you get paid once a week, twice a month, whatever it is. As soon as you get paid, you go to the bank to cash a check, but you take the check and go dish it out into the streets. You drinking, gambling, partying, doing whatever you're doing, but you're not saving, And so he put together a plan that not only forced people, not really forced, but gave them the opportunity to save, but also what do you do with that money? How do you build that legacy? And then you go from having basically poverty to now people are building homes for themselves, making communities, building businesses, writing their own way, basically. And that created the sound floor that became eventually Negro Wall Street. And this started I think they opened that business in 1898. And out of that, you get, like I said, that was called North Carolina Mutual Life Insurance. The bank we opened was called Mechanics and Farmers Bank, still in business today. From there, outside of insurance and banking, we had our own mill. We produced our own socks. We produced our own suits. Matter of fact, I got another picture from W.B. Du Bois, who wrote, I think what's the name of that book? It was, I can't remember the name. I'm drawing a blank right now, but he wrote a book about Black Durham and said, how would it feel? Just imagine kind of what I just explained to you, where you can, go to a Black-owned school, you can go to a Black-owned job, you can go to a Black-owned everything, church, you get sick, you go to a Black doctor. And then when you get sick and die, you've got an insurance policy that's going to keep your family in a Black community, pay your house, pay for everything. And they'll bury you in a Black cemetery. And they keep the process going. So that dollar was able to turn. So
we talked about that a couple of months ago, about everybody involved in that community had not only buy-in concerning the community because of the accounts that were at the Black bank,
that's right.
But we also talked about the different jobs that were available to the community.
Yep.
So if there was an opportunity for employment, the opportunity was always there. And when we talked about the dollars that were recycling in the community, it wasn't, it was more of an option to take the dollar out of the community than to keep it in, because everything that you needed was right there.
You already had it.
And so with that history that you've not only studied, but that your lineage is a part of, talk about how that can be applied to what just happened in the Southland here in Illinois, the South suburbs. How can we move forward to start the process? Because the foundation's already been laid. It was laid by the Spaldings, the Washingtons, and a couple other people who decided to come together. You talked about getting it out of the mud.
Mm-hmm.
So in some cases, we may still have to get some things out of the mud, but the foundation's already laid. So, talk a little bit about how you can bring those fundamentals to a place like the South Suburbs, Thornton Township, for example,
It
the
comes
village
down
of Dalton.
the village of Dalton. It comes down to cooperation. And the way they were able to succeed, Charles Clinton Spalding, going back to him, he was president of the company for 50 years, the longest running president at that company in particular, and probably any other company in America. I'm not sure about that though. But he led that company and that city for 50 years, which means he was plugged into politics. He was plugged into, what's happening regionally, what's happening with anything that impacted the community. But he was also able to make programs. One of his programs that I would like to bring back is called the Forum, where one day a week they would get everyone at the company who had a gripe or a complaint or felt like they weren't being heard. Maybe they don't like what their check looked like, whatever it is. He would make you like kind of get a coalition together. You get your people in your group, and it was the youngest among you that would speak for you. So if you just had somebody fresh out of college, let's call it, or even high school, because sometimes some people didn't go to college, went straight to work, they would have to understand what's going on with the community, what's going on with your constituents, and speak for you in front of executives, in front of the leaders. And it forced them to first take self-improvement or self-control. I'm thinking the wrong word here, but it empowered you to, take on your own abilities for yourself. Don't let nobody speak for you. And it was like pulling up. So we lift as we climb kind of thing. So how that translates into a community and how I would like to see it applied is, these programs that we had previously still exist. They never went anywhere. They went dormant. We didn't have a succession plan where we pulled it down and passed it down. But we have to understand how it got lost. And a piece of that is, they say Black people don't work together. I don't believe that because I've seen it. As a matter of fact, Black people work greatest together. We work the best because we're all in the same. We've got the same. We call it not really requirements, but we're facing the same hurdles and challenges. And my goal, I have this written up. I got a whole plan where I want to see what you do in Dalton is the same thing you do in Chicago, is the same thing you do in West Town, same thing you do, within your regions, and how your different mayors roll up to your state representatives, how your state representatives roll into your senators, and knowing how that, trickles down to you. They call it trickle down politics. But if you don't understand the system, then you won't understand if you're going against your self-interest. So the more we understand how to use what we have today effectively, and we see what works in different communities. Right now, they got something called the Council of Mayors, and the mayors get together to figure out, what are you doing? What are we doing? Is it working out? Let's see if we can try that, And so they're trying to align execution strategies. Now, we did that before previously, too. That was called National Negro Business League, started by Booker T. Washington in 1900. First meeting was in Boston, Massachusetts. And what that was you bring all Black businesses together, no matter what the industry is, and we're having conferences. Now, Black people are the most meetingest people, but can you get something out of it? What is your takeaway?
Right.
And my objective is to say, find out what worked in those previous programs, bring them back, and make them proliferate.
I think that's a great idea, and we talked about that extensively. I like what you said about the youngest speaking among the folks.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot going on with that. Not only is it tasking that young man or young woman to understand what's going on within their community among them, but it's giving them an opportunity, like you said, to have their voice heard. It's a teaching moment because it's not one way. It's also responses coming back to that young man or that young woman from the people that they're speaking to. So the whole question answer period is being conducted at that point. So, and that also secures your legacy.
That's right.
With your community, because the information that you need to pass on to the youth is actually going from the bottom up.
Yeah.
And so everybody's involved with that. Based on what you're talking about, and I agree with it, a lot of people feel that there may be a lot of hurdles. So before taking ownership, they're quick to point at the things that may not work for whatever reason. We talked about the council of mayors before. One thing when I was running, one thing that I discussed was all the townships that are under the same umbrella, which would be Dolton Township, should come together and have some type of forum, town hall meetings, question and answer periods about what's the strongest going on in the village. I'll just give an example. South Holland has a lot of state representation with the CDL place, Secretary of State, and then you take some place like Harvey, which does not. So possibly one extreme to the next. So how do you think? What do you think would be the most advantageous way to move forward with people who are quick to say, hey, we might have a hurdle here, we might have a hurdle there. Nobody's getting together to vote. Nobody's getting together to talk. How do you tackle that type of challenge?
So you're going to have some unwilling participants in everything that you do. And they say the more the merrier. That's not always the case. You know, on a team of 20 people, you're trying to get an objective done. It's usually an 80-20 expression of sufficient efficiency. So 80% of that work is going to come from 20% of that group. So you're going to have to know who your generals are in every population size. So if we have different group townships, call it Dolton, and surrounding, I would say first you present the argument to them and you get the test of what their resolves are with it, because not everybody's going to agree. Everybody want to have a good plan, but they don't want to execute. You know, my goal is to say, okay, I hear you, but what would you do different? You know, and if you would like to lead this, absolutely come up here, because if you feel like you're better than me, put the best man in the job. You know, but like I said, one thing we can do is organize, but you have to also follow through and commit. So there's going to be a mix of everybody. You're going to get some people who are just bandwagon, fair weather friends. You know, you're going to get some people who are against it and want to sabotage it. You know, you may even get some infiltrators who want to just keep an eye on things. You know, and they're going to look like they're your friend. You know, and we have to accept all of these. And one of the people was Fred Hampton. He understood this very clear. And you have to still build that coalition regardless, because the need or the outcome is greater than the risk to getting it done. So
sometimes the coalition starts with just one or two people.
That's right.
And so I think what's important is to realize that, you know, it's good to have a team. It's good to strategize. It's good to plan. But sometimes you have to move before everybody else is ready to move.
Yeah.
You have to be your biggest cheerleader, your biggest fan when it comes to your vision. I say often on the show that you have to be the best you for yourself. Sometimes we spend too much time trying to be the best us for someone else.
That's right.
So what that does is it divides your message. Sometimes you have to compromise some things that you were on fire for in the beginning. But when you focus on being the best you for you, people are more attracted to that. They're attracted to that more so.
That's right.
And if it's something that they can share in concerning the vision, I believe that that's how you start to move forward with a coalition.
I agree.
So we talked some about the post-election, and how it's important to start talking to brothers and sisters about the agendas with the village, the agendas with the township, and to actually start strategizing and mobilizing to ensure that people are able to move forward. Now, with that, my goal as someone who ran for trustee, uh, my goal is to reach out to the incumbents, to reach out to those who unfortunately didn't get elected, talk to them about the things that matter most to them. For example, there were a lot of things that they actually championed, and that was a part of um, their story concerning the election. I'm confident that the majority of people that you saw run connected with the people who had those concerns. So because of that, I believe that the challenge and the opportunity, I say those words both together, the challenge and the opportunity will be to get those leaders, those potential incumbents, those actual incumbents together to champion the priorities of the village, to champion the priorities of the township, and put that on an agenda to move those things forward. What are your thoughts on that?
I don't disagree. And kind of conversely to what you ask about, how do you get someone who's not ready to make that commitment? How do you get that person to sign up and do what they said they was going to do? You can't force them. What is the forcing function? Why does it matter to them as much as it matters to you? How can you get them to care more than you?
Some people don't choose to.
Some people don't know how
participate. They don't know how to participate, and I would say more so it's because they don't see the impact. That the lack of decision or the lack of choice makes in their daily lives. I believe that people are very busy being busy, but they're not busy putting their feet to the road to get things done for their community. I'll give you an example. Taxes are very high in the village, in the township, in Cook County.
Imagine that.
Right. However, how many people have actually filed taxes in the village, in the township, in Cook County? How many people actually know how high their taxes are? How many people actually care? And so, as to your point, you can't make people care. I believe that it's important to start with those that actually voted. Start with those that actually stepped up to do the process. Start with the people that they voted for. And go ahead and get this train rolling down the track.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about how not even just politics works, how really any type of organization is ran, it has an objective, it has a mission. And how well you understand that mission and how well you identify with that mission determines completely what your outcome may be if you're not willing to be a part of it. So people who don't vote aren't a part of the system. And can you really complain? If I gave you a gun and didn't teach you how to use it, didn't teach you how to load it, what you gonna be able to do with it? You might be able to throw it at somebody. You don't even know if that's gonna work, So understanding how the politics runs, understanding what Civics 101 will get you, understanding how your ballot is your bullet turns into you being a part of the all, and then now your population size has grown tremendously.
Now you said something, your ballot is your bullet. Before the saying was it's either the ballot or the bullet. So tell the people, why do you combine the two?
Well, previously that statement was meant to be
contentious.
Very,
right,
to say the least. Trying to be PG on radio, but I say it that way because you can't look at it any different way. Because if I told you were fighting somebody, but I didn't tell you where they were standing, how would you know if you're in the right spot, right? So to me, your ballot gives you a direction. Your ballot gives you one in the chamber, and with that one in the chamber, you got one shot to make that real true difference. And if everybody's shooting at the same target and everybody's on the same page, then you might actually be able to make a difference. So even if that difference isn't something that you expected, you got the intended outcome. Your intended outcome was to make a difference. right? So it might not go the right way all the time. Sometimes Democrats may be running on a liberal ticket, and the Republicans might have one or two things that suit your purpose, but they're never going to connect because they expect each other to be two sides of the same coin, you know. But I believe in crossing bridges. So same thing they did here with the rainbow politics, that worked down in Wilmington. Wilmington, 1898, they had the first successful insurrection. And it was because Black people had more representation in politics. Because by 1898, 30 years prior to or after the Civil War Reconstruction period, we're we're right there by the ports. We got all the money, we got all the influence, and we're mixed with white because coming from slavery, half of us was mixed because of the slave master, right? So now you're combining yourselves with these white communities in the antebellum South, and the real whites, I can call them, because it's exactly what they were back then. Democrats, they were where the Ku Klux Klan comes from. That comes directly out of as a response to Black empowerment, Black improvement. And so why I'm pulling it in there is because that Rainbow Coalition was now it was a few of those whites who say, you know what, the only way we're going to be able to win and get anything done on our side is to combine ourselves with these Black people. And so during the secondary, the primary, all the elections that they had, federal, state, they were voting for these Black people, and they joined to get their constituents represented. So now the Democrats know they're never going to be able to win. So how else would they find their opportunity? They had to fight for it, and their fight was to literally take them and take them out of by force. So anyway, that's somebody who understands what that bullet is, and that ballot becomes your intellectual bullet, if you will. That's what I mean by that.
The pen is truly mightier than the sword in a lot of ways, and
You got it.
we fight wars of attrition too much. Wars of attrition don't work, especially when it comes to our cause. So I'm sure you've heard about April 5th. April 5th, as far as folks calling for us to protest and others saying, hey, you know what? We need to stay home.
Yeah.
So what is your opinion about what's supposed to go on in April 5th?
My opinion is, as a base Black people, we've done that work. We've been here before. We know how this ends. And for us to stand up to fight for half of what we were due anyway is an effort in futility. You're going to get more of the same because now we're agreeing with the system. Now, the only way to be silently direct about your influence on the system is to not participate in it. Because you be privy to it. As long as you understand what the game is, you can play it, and rather than be played by it. But in this particular case, this game is definitely built against us, and I think we realize that. So my point in saying I agree that we shouldn't get out there, which I'm not sure what your position is, but I say that we should not go and put our lives on the line for something that we didn't ask for to start with. They, being not us, created this fight, and now they're fighting amongst themselves, and they're just going to have to dig it out because now that gives us an opportunity to go back to what we had previously. And I'm not talking about segregation. I don't want to take us back to where they think America was great. I want us to take us back to where we had two good boots under us and we can pull them up by our own bootstraps. So,
yeah, I believe that you should pick a fight that you can win.
Absolutely.
And I believe when it comes to strategy, you do that reverse planning process.
Right.
So you have to look at not only your resources or your capabilities, but you have to look at what the end game is.
Mm-hmm.
I agree that we've been down the road before. We've marched, we've shouted, we've talked about, giving peace a chance while we're getting shot and getting our heads knocked. I believe that resources would be more beneficial for us to make movements by not making the purchases that this country depends on.
That's right.
By keeping your wallets in your pocket.
That's how you speak.
That's how you speak.
Yeah.
because that's the language that's been understood.
Yeah.
For us to be in an uproar about injustice, and then after the protests, roll right into uh, an establishment that supported those who we protest against is an oxymoron.
Absolutely.
And I believe that it's short sighted. And I believe that our vision needs to be um, a more, not only broader vision, but a vision that has legacy in mind, something beyond us, something bigger than us, something more important than us. Um, no one is the movement regarding anything that's done.
That's right.
We get in our own way when we say the seat is what I'm going for because I want the power at the seat, and someone has to come to me for me to make the decisions because I am king or I am queen. It's not about the seat, it's about the work.
That's right.
And that goes beyond the politics. It's not about the seat, it's about the work when it comes to the community, when it comes to us getting our just due. And what is just due? Just due can look different for a lot of people. Just due can look different from a lot of angles because of where you're from, because of how you grew, because of how you thought. The diaspora is not, we're not a monolithic,
Yeah.
right? So I think it's important to not fall into the same trap
Absolutely.
regarding April 5th or any other day. Um, Places like, well, I'm not going to shout out those organizations, but there are organizations that are suffering right now because of our lack of dollars going into their system.
And they know it. It's a direct response to, um, uh, like they went back on their word. You know, we went through George Floyd, we went through COVID, we had the Great Reset. We thought we were doing something at least to get out of the mud, and it turned out that they turned their back on us, and they said they were going to help, and they didn't help. You know, um, so now everything is performative. And
Let me ask you, are we responsible for asking for the help in the first place?
well, we are now, and I say that way because we didn't know any better, and where we were back in the 1920s, right? After the Great Depression, that was right before the Great Depression. We had uh, before the Great Depression, we had the great boom of industrialization, and Black people had land, Black people had businesses, Black people had their own autonomy. Black people were moving and shaking around the country. We built, don't know why I'm drawing a blank, but like
Because you're on the radio.
that's probably it. The man who gave us the technology that trains can now run on the same track, knowing where each train is, how they can shoot telegrams to each other. Black man did all that, So it was because of the ingenuity and the necessity for Black people to do something and have the autonomy to get it done. Give us 5 minutes alone, and say, look, we're not going to bother you. Y'all can have it over here. Stick to yourselves. We're going to create something out of nothing, whether it's refrigeration, whether it's security. You can go on and on and on. But I feel like, the best thing we can do for ourselves is to understand that we are here for ourselves. There's no one else who's going to save us. And Dr. John Henry Clark, one of my great advisors who is sorely missed. I never knew him personally, but I've, studied a lot of his work. Historian, great man. He said, if you can't put your own diaper together for your child and manufacture your own safety pins, you can't do for yourself. And you're always going to be dependent on somebody else. So that's the way they want you to be. They want you to be contained in your phone, on social, distracted. Don't worry about what's going on. We're worrying about that for you. And we're going to play you because you're the game, and people won't realize they're getting played. So, yeah, I'm very, very into how we got here and how to get us out. That's exactly where I'm at.
So moving forward for myself concerning what just happened yesterday, April 1st, and what led up to the election, what led up to me throwing my hat in the ring, so to speak. Now it's time to put the coalition together.
That's right.
So based on the conversations that we've had before tonight, the conversations that we've had since sitting here, my plan is to again reach out to those who are leaders,
Mhm.
those who have led in the communities, those who are actually the incumbents, and talk to them about the agenda.
Mhm.
Come together with an agendas list and start moving things forward. So transparency and communication are absolutely key, not only about what we're going to be doing moving forward,
Mhm.
but what happened before yesterday. And I mean this. There's a lot of baggage that's coming into the current administrations, not just Dalton, but with the township as well.
Yeah.
A lot of baggage coming in. I want to be sure that when we have a coalition to move things forward, that the baggage from before does not paralyze the intent to
Mhm.
move things forward. What are your ideas about keeping the baggage separate from the process that people coming together to move forward would want to uh, participate in, be a part of? What would be your ideas of how you can keep the two separate?
So one, I like exactly where you're at because as we need more people like that to go into the communities, having put their hat in the ring, to sign up for, something that may look impossible, but you're like, I care enough to do it, and I've got the time, and I will make the time because it's necessary. Um, and then to not win, but still want to be participant in that system. Um, my suggestion is to start with the framework. The framework is I always take it back to legacy history. What did we have previously? How did it work? How do we create it? How do we sustain it? And then how do we scale it? So that's with every working system. It needs to have some type of function. It needs to have a definitive operation, and it needs to have an objective or a goal that it meets. And if it's not meeting that set objective, then how do you monitor that system? How do you control that system and take something out of the process or add something to it? Typically, no process is a good process. That means everything is running as it should, and you're lean and you're mean and you're moving and you can be nimble. But when you're talking about politics, it's a completely different. What you're seeing now, in my opinion, in most cases, especially on a federal level, is a response mechanism to what people are now getting that they didn't sign up to. They got buyer's remorse, right? And so you might get like, apologies if I say this wrong, but AOC, grassroots, don't have no political background, never worked in corporate America, um, really just caring about her community. And everybody that she sees she goes vote for doesn't do it. They're not it. So you are the only solution. And she stepped up enough to get the votes and cared enough to, you know, devise a plan. Now, what you would do as one who wants to be a part of that plan, how do you organize? And what is your primary goal and objective? And how does that relate to me? How does that relate to my mother, my family, my constituents, my church, my school, anything that involves me? Because what you are doing has to be an investment in yourself. Everything is, you got to follow the money, right? Everything is money. So if it's not paying dividends, it's not working correctly. And knowing that and understanding it would be, that kind of goes into what I said about the council of mayors. That's the same system that I want to create, but it doesn't have to be with just the mayors, but we do have to do it with um, people who have a title. So in Sierra Leone,
The position.
a position, exactly. In Sierra Leone and most places in Africa, you'll have someone in the family who is the chairman, someone who is the security, the one who defends the people, one who speaks on politics, one who introduces the Unkomfu, the chief. And you have these different places within the family that when somebody dies or passes away or moves out, or it fills in, and now the kids are seeing this whole structure. So that's your base ground infrastructure, and then everyone knows their role. Because now, okay, I might not be able to run for mayor, but I could be clerk representative or something. I'm not sure about the whole ballot, but I can do something else within that form and help that person in that position that I ran with and or ran against, And if that person can't seem to get the job done, well, I'm going to try to help them to get that
Right.
job done. And then maybe I can see my agenda go forward, or our agenda, because it's for the people. And then if that said person can't do it, they're going to see you out front anyway. So you're going to run and get the seat again. So you can win by losing in certain cases, because now people know you want to come correct. And now you have the objective with the force behind it, which is your why. And even if it has a 10% chance of working out, it's worth taking. So there's going to be a lot of naysayers out there, but people don't understand what war they're actually fighting. World War III started a long time ago,
Mhm.
and we are looked at as criminals just for being black. So understand what opportunities exist and turn them in, or challenges, and turn them into opportunities.
Well said. I like what you said about the why. I think that when you define the why, that people can honestly get behind that definition.
That's right.
So I think a lot of people attempt to win popularity contests. They like to ping what they think people want to hear, how people want to get down the road. I think it's important to know thyself and seek self-improvement in the process.
Absolutely.
Sometimes you move forward, and when you move forward, you learn as you're going forward, which is very important.
That's right.
As you move forward, you might have to pivot on the methodologies of the how. But when it comes to the why, you cannot waver.
That's a central focus.
It's very essential.
Yeah.
So I'll go back to myself. I talked about the work. I still talk about the work, and I will talk about the work, because if you're focused on the position, and as you said, people have to have those positions to give you the necessary structure for you to build on and move forward in.
That's right.
Build on and move forward in. Build on top of that structure and move forward in the process.
That's it.
Move forward in the process concerning the social, economic opportunities that exist that you can actually foster.
Yeah.
You don't have to join up or get in or be a part of when you have the knowledge and the structure to actually honcho it.
Yeah.
To be the head of it, to be the leader of it. So I believe that we are each other's keeper. I believe that we have the capabilities within um, our um, wheelhouse, so to speak,
Oh yeah.
because the foundation has been laid. It takes attention, it takes work, and it takes the why to be defined. Again, I say it takes the why to be defined. You have to define the why. Because if you don't define the why, then you can easily be steered in a direction but the one that you're trying to go into.
And that is not your, objective. Some people can be dissuaded because they don't believe enough in their why.
That's right.
They don't know how. They don't know how to stay steadfast and grounded and believe in a higher power. But I realized I didn't answer a piece of your question, which I think was, I think I mentioned framework. Now I'm going to go back to it and lose it again. But as you were talking, I was like, man, that's definitely where you want to end up, right? So knowing where you're trying to hit, which is the target, and if that target seems to be moving, then course correct. So some people don't have it in them. We did a lot more with less.
We did.
We've been here before.
And because of that, because we recognize legacy, because we recognize structure, ancestry, those who have gone before us to get the job done and get the work done, it takes the very few to move an agenda forward once again. I look at the structure of a fire. Those big logs are going to burn all night, but they cannot get lit without the kindling.
That's right.
So the smallest twig, right? The smallest twig that acts as a propellant is what's necessary to get that fire moving, to get things burning. And once that happens, the heat supplies whatever you need for it to supply, whether it's light, whether it's heat for cooking, survival. And so moving forward, for all of those who are listening, for all of those who will see this, I would just like to encourage you all to seek out your why. Try to find out what your why is. Define yourself by the why and move forward in that. You may feel like you're alone. You may feel like you need that team before you move, but you have to move when the water's troubled for your purpose. I talk about circles all the time. I talk about whether it's a big circle or a little circle to make sure that your circles are giving as well as receiving, and vice versa for you in that circle. Just because you have a huge circle doesn't mean that it's beneficial to you. So restructure your circles. Take a look at the things that surround you and take a look at what's actually motivating those around you concerning your purpose and your why, and move forward with the agendas that you feel are not only important to you, but important to those that are around you that make you who you are. It's very important to attempt to attract those to you by being the best you for you. So just want to share that with you. I really appreciate all those who have joined the show, who are watching the show. I know the Facebook Live went out. There was a couple of calls trying to come through, but this again will be on those other platforms that you're used to seeing it on. So before we end the show, Brandon, thank you for coming to the Denasha Harrison Show.
Absolutely.
Final thoughts of what you got to say to the people. What's on your mind? Final thoughts.
I would say do what you can where you're at. You know, there was a speech by Booker T. Washington, I think in 1895. So we had just lost Frederick Douglass, and he gave a speech called, oh man, W.B. Du Bois called it the Great Compromise, but it was called the Atlanta Exposition, I believe, the Atlanta Address. And he said, cast down your buckets where you are. And what that meant was, if you're thirsty, water is not far from you. Maybe you're not searching hard enough. You don't believe it, you know. So one thing I will lead the people with is, you are more than what you have been through. You know, you batting 1,000 if you're still on this earth, and you still got breath and life in your lungs, and there is a way out, and there's no need to get disheartened about it. There's no need to, you know, rant and rave about how bad it is. And, you know, if you're around negative energy, you got to remove yourself, as you said, check your circles. But each one teach one, and find your tribe. You know, you get a part of something like what we got going on here. I mean, it takes one, maybe two people to make a movement. You think about all these slave uprisings. It was more than 300 of them, and they won't talk about them because they were successful. And we knew how to move. We've been here before. It's in our DNA. So I have no concerns. I am very outlooking into the future, and I believe that the people will understand and they will coalesce. So,
well, I appreciate those words, and I'm looking forward to working with you on the coalition that we discussed.
same.
And for those who continue to watch, continue to follow, if you have questions, feel free to ask those questions. And so moving forward, and actually when you do come back to the show, I did want to talk about how Booker T. Washington and W.B.E. Du Bois, or Du Bois.
Du Bois, yeah.
They say Du Bois, not how he pronounced it. He pronounced it Du Bois.
Yeah.
So I do want to talk, have you talk to the people about how they were not adversaries, contrary
Oh, absolutely.
to that. A lot of people want to pit them against one another.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting conversation to have. And you mentioned the speech about drop your buckets where you are.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people continue to search beyond where they are, wasting time.
That's right.
They don't put the work in right where they are. So instead of dropping the buckets right where they are, to cast those buckets and get whatever that yield is right at their feet, they're always searching, never accomplishing anything.
Yeah.
So I would encourage you all to.
I'll give you a Bible verse. It's not cast down your buckets where you are, but the kingdom of heaven is within you, you know, and those who know thyself will receive it.
So yeah,
Right.
you know what? I'm gonna have to end the show on that. So I'm not gonna come behind that. Thank you all for watching the Denasha Harrison Show here on Intellectual Radio. We'll see you next Wednesday with more knowledge. Brandon, thank you for being a guest, and keep looking forward, keep moving forward. And again, thank you for watching the show. See you next Wednesday. All right.